Out here, the packages pile up on the porch in winter because the roads go bad and people stop coming by, and a box can sit under the eave for a week before anyone touches it. I live at the end of a long gravel road outside Cody, Wyoming, with the mountains close enough to feel and the nearest neighbor a half-mile off. And on the afternoon this story turns on, there was a single battered brown package sitting on my doormat in the cold, and I almost walked right past it, because it was addressed in my own handwriting. My name is Ruth. I am 47 years old, and I drive a school bus, the long rural route, the one that starts in the dark. I have spent 20 years getting other people's children safely to where they are going, and safely home again, which is its own small irony, given that for 6 years I could not get to one particular child at all. That child is my grandson. His name is Caleb, and on the afternoon of the package, he was 7 years old, and I had not laid eyes on him in person in nearly 2 of those years, and I had spent the whole of that time being absolutely certain I knew whose fault it was. Let me tell you the story I had, before I tell you the one that was true. My son's name is Mark. He is my only child, and I raised him mostly alone, and we were close. We were the kind of close that two people get when it has been just the two of them against a hard stretch of weather for a long time. And then, when Mark was 24, he married a young woman named Hailey. You have to understand how much I trusted that boy, because the size of the trust is the size of the wound. When Mark was 9 and money was thin, he gave me his birthday $5 bill so that I would not worry, and I gave it back, and we both pretended I had not seen what it meant. When he was 16, he sat up with me the night his father's child support stopped for good, doing the math at the kitchen table like a small grim accountant, telling me we would be fine. He was the one person in the world I had never once had to wonder about. I want that on the table before I go any further, because everyone who hears this story eventually asks me the same thing. How could you not have suspected your own son? And the answer is simply that I had spent 24 years learning, with good reason, that Mark was the one human being whose word I never had to check. That is not a flaw in me. That is what a lifetime of being told the truth by someone does to you. It teaches you to stop looking. I did not warm to Hailey. I will be honest about that, because the not warming is the soil the whole rest of this grew in. She was quiet, and she was guarded, and she did not laugh easily at my jokes, and she had a way of going still and watchful in a room that I read, from the very start, as coldness. I told myself I was being fair to her. I was not being fair to her. I had decided, somewhere underneath where I could see it, that this closed-off young woman was not good enough for my boy. And once a woman like me decides a thing like that, she spends years quietly collecting evidence for it without ever once checking the evidence against anything. When Caleb was born, it was the best day of my life. And for the first couple of years, it was good. I drove the 4 hours to their place when I could. I held that baby. I was a grandmother. But then the visits started getting harder to arrange. Mark was always the one who told me so. Not a good time right now, Mom. Hailey's stressed, Mom. Hailey wants some space, Mom. The calls got shorter, and Mark was the one on the phone for them. And when I asked to talk to Caleb, there was always a reason it could not happen just then. The photographs stopped. The visits stopped. And every single time, the message came to me through Mark, and every single time, the reason had Hailey's name attached to it. So you can see how easy it was. You can see how the story built itself. Hailey is keeping my grandson from me. Hailey, the cold one, the guarded one, the one I never warmed to. Hailey has gotten her claws into my son and is slowly, deliberately, cutting his mother out of his life. That was the story. I told it to my sister. I told it to the women on my route. I told it to myself, lying awake, for 6 years. The daughter-in-law was the wall, and my poor son was caught on the other side of it, doing his loyal best, sending me the bad news as gently as he could. I kept sending the gifts. That part matters, so let me tell you about it. Every year, on Caleb's birthday, and every year at Christmas, I mailed a package. A careful one, a real one. A wooden truck I had sanded myself one year, a sweater the next, a book I had read aloud to his father at the same age. And every year, Nothing came back. No call, no note, no crayon drawing, no photograph of the boy holding the thing. Just silence. And I folded that silence too, into the story. Hailey is throwing them away. Hailey will not even let the child know they came. I pictured my packages going straight into her trash, unopened, and it broke my heart in a fresh way every December. And it also, I'm ashamed to say, felt good because every imagined trash can was one more piece of evidence in the case I was building against the woman who had stolen my family. The wooden truck is the one I think about most. I made it the winter Caleb turned 4. I'm not a craftsman, but I am patient, and I worked on that truck for a month of evenings, sanding the wheels until they spun true, because I had decided that if I could not be in the room with my grandson, then I would at least put a month of my hands into something that could. I wrapped it, I mailed it, and I heard nothing, and I pictured Hailey lifting it out of the box with that cold, still face of hers and dropping it straight into the trash, and I grieved that imaginary moment for weeks. I know now what actually happened to the wooden truck, because I asked, at that kitchen table. Caleb never saw it. Hailey never saw it. It never made it past the front door at all. But it was not a trash can that stopped it. It was a hand I had never once thought to suspect. And then came the afternoon of the returned package. It was January. I had mailed Caleb's Christmas gift late, as I always ran late in December. And here it was, come back to me, sitting on my frozen doormat, the brown paper soft from the weather. Return to sender, the post office had stamped across it. No such recipient, or refused. I do not even remember which. I only remember bending down to pick it up, expecting the small dull ache of one more rejection, and then going completely still in the cold. Because there was writing on the package that was not mine. Across the front, under the return to sender stamp, someone had written, in pen, "Not at this address. Please stop." And I knew that handwriting. I had been reading that handwriting on permission slips and birthday cards and grocery lists for 25 years. It was not Hailey's handwriting, it was Mark's. I stood on my own porch in the Wyoming cold, and I felt the entire architecture of 6 years shift under me and come down. Because there was no version of the story I had been telling myself that this handwriting fit into. If Hailey were the one keeping me away, the package would have gone into Hailey's trash, the way I had always pictured it. It would not have come back to me marked in my own son's hand. My son's handwriting on that label meant one thing, one impossible thing, that the package had not been intercepted by the wall. The package had been sent back by the door. Mark had handled it. Mark had written, "Please stop." Mark had been the one returning his mother's gifts. I want to tell you that I refused to believe it, that I invented some new innocent explanation, the way I had invented innocent explanations for my son for 6 years. But standing there, I found I could not anymore, because all at once 100 small things I had been carefully not looking at turned around to face me. It was always Mark on the phone. It was always Mark relaying Hailey's supposed wishes. It was always Mark explaining gently why Caleb could not come to the phone. And I had never once, in 6 years, actually heard Hailey say a single one of the cold things I had spent 6 years hating her for. Every cruel message had reached me through my son's mouth, in my son's words, with my daughter-in-law's name stapled to the front of it. I had never checked. Why would I have checked? He was my boy. He was the one I trusted. I drove the 4 hours the next day. I did not call ahead. I think I knew that if I called, Mark would find a reason. I just drove, through the mountains in the January light, with the returned package on the seat beside me like a passenger, and I knocked on my son's door. It was Hailey who answered it, and the look on her face when she saw me standing there was the second thing that broke me that week, because it was not the cold, guarded look of my long story. It was shock. It was pure, undefended shock, the look of a woman seeing the last person on earth she expected, and behind the shock, rising fast, something that looked terribly, unbearably like hope. She said, "Ruth?" And then she said, "You came." As though my coming were a thing she had stopped believing would ever happen. I almost could not get out of the truck when I first pulled up. I had driven 4 hours rehearsing a confrontation. I had a whole speech, cold and righteous, ready for the daughter-in-law I was finally going to face down. And then I sat in the driveway looking at their ordinary house, the toys in the yard, a child's bicycle tipped on its side, and I felt the speech go to ash in my mouth, because none of it fit the handwriting on the package on my seat. So I left the speech in the truck. I walked up empty-handed, with nothing prepared, which is the only honest way I have ever managed to walk into anything that truly mattered. And when Hailey opened that door, and I saw the shock and the hope fighting on her face, I understood, before either of us had said a single real word, that I had driven 4 hours to apologize to the wrong villain, and that the right one was not yet home from work. We talked for a long time, Hailey and I, at her kitchen table, with Caleb at school, and Mark not yet home from work. And over the course of that conversation, the wall I had built around that young woman for 6 years came down brick by brick, and I sat in the rubble of it and was ashamed, because Hailey had never kept me away. Hailey, it turned out, had spent years quietly asking Mark why his mother never called anymore, why I had stopped sending things, why I had seemed to lose interest in Caleb, because that is the story Mark had been telling on his end. To Hailey, I was the grandmother who had drifted away. To me, Hailey was the daughter-in-law who had shut the door. Mark had stood in the middle for 6 years, telling each of us a different lie, and the lies had kept us each blaming the other, and neither of us had ever thought to do the one simple thing that would have ended it in an afternoon, which was to talk to each other directly, without my son in between. The thing that undid me most, sitting at that table, was how alike our two stories had been. Hailey pulled out her phone and showed me text messages, years of them, where she had asked Mark, again and again, whether they ought to reach out to me, whether Caleb could call his grandmother, whether I was all right out there alone through the winter. And every time, Mark had told her to leave it. He said you needed space, she told me. He said you'd had a falling out with your own sister and didn't want any family around right now. He said you found the visits stressful. She looked at me and she said, I thought you didn't want us. And I had to tell her that I had spent the identical 6 years on my own end of it, certain that she did not want me, grieving a grandson I believed she was hiding. We had been two women, weeping in two separate houses, over the very same loss, each one carefully taught to blame the other, by the one person who sat between us holding both ends of the lie. I am not going to tell you, here, the whole of why Mark did it. Some of it is his, and some of it I am still, honestly, coming to understand. But the shape of it is this. My son was not a villain. My son was a struggling man. There were things in his life, in those years, that he was deeply ashamed of and did not want his mother to see. Things he was hiding from me far more than he was hiding me from anyone. And the easiest way to keep his mother at a distance, so that she would not see the parts of his life he could not bear for her to see, was to make her believe that the distance was someone else's doing. He needed a wall, and rather than be the wall himself and face his mother's questions, he simply pointed at his wife and said, There, that is the wall. And I, who had never warmed to Hailey, who was already half looking for a reason, I took the wall he offered me and I built the rest of it myself, gladly, for 6 years. The hardest part of all of this is not even that I lost the years with Caleb, though I did, and I will not get them back. The hardest part is what I did to Hailey. For 6 years, I cast a frightened, struggling, decent young woman, a woman who was, the entire time, trying to hold my son and her family together, and quietly wondering why his mother had abandoned them, as the villain of my life. I told it to my sister. I told it to the women on my route. I gave that innocent woman a reputation, in the small world of my own telling, that she did not earn and could not defend, because she never even knew the trial was happening. She had been convicted, in absentia, in a courtroom she did not know existed, by a jury of one who had already made up her mind the day she met her. Mark and I are not all right. I want to be honest with you about that, because the honest version is the only one worth your time. When he came home that evening and found me at his kitchen table with Hailey and the returned package between us, There was no movie scene. There was a hard, terrible conversation. And there have been more since. And the deeper things, the things he was hiding, the reasons under the reasons, those are going to take a long time and may not fully heal at all. You do not undo 6 years of being lied to by the person you trusted most in one good cry. I love my son. I want to say that plainly, because I am afraid that in telling you the truth about what he did, I have made him sound like a monster, and he is not one. He is a frightened, flawed man who got himself into a corner he was too ashamed to climb out of, and who reached in that corner for the cheapest and most available wall. And the cheapest, most available wall was the woman his mother already disliked. He did a cowardly and a cruel thing. He also did it out of shame, which is a more human engine than cruelty, and which I, who raised him, cannot honestly pretend I had no hand in. A boy who learned at 9 to hide his own need so that his mother would not worry, does not, perhaps, grow into a man who finds it easy to let her see him fail. I am not excusing him. I am only saying that the thread runs back further than that kitchen table, and that I have had to pick up my own end of it. But I am back in Caleb's life now. I drove out for his birthday this spring, and he is shy with me, the way a 7-year-old is shy with a grandmother he barely remembers, and I am earning him back slowly, an afternoon at a time, and I will keep doing it for as long as I have. And Hailey. I owe the rest of my life to making it right with Hailey, and I have started. I told her, at that kitchen table, every cruel thing I had thought about her, because she deserved to know the size of what had been done to her, and to hear me name it out loud. And then I told her the truth, which is that she had been, the whole time, exactly the daughter-in-law I had told myself she was not. Loyal and steady and trying and good. We are building something now, she and I, out of the wreckage my son made and I furnished. It is going better, if I'm honest, than things are going with Mark. The woman I spent 6 years blaming has turned out to be the easiest person in this family to love. Once I finally took down the wall I had built and looked at who was actually standing there. If there is someone at the edge of your family that you have quietly decided is the problem, the in-law, the outsider, the one you never warmed to, and all your evidence about them seems to reach you secondhand, through someone else, then this story was for you. One word in the comments, if it found you. Returned. Just that. It tells me you have just felt the cold little draft of a question you have never asked. Who, exactly, has been the one carrying you all that bad news? Subscribe for new stories, real patterns, full narratives, the long game. 2 small pieces of wisdom from this one, before I go. The first. When you are getting all of your information about one person through a second person, you do not actually have information about the first person at all. You have a portrait painted by the messenger, and the messenger always has reasons of their own. For 6 years, every cruel word I believed Hailey had said reached me through Mark, and I never once heard it from Hailey directly, and I never once thought that was strange. If someone in your family is always the one relaying the bad news about someone else, always explaining why so-and-so is angry, why so-and-so wants distance, go, at least once, around them. Ask the other person yourself. The wall you have been told about is sometimes standing in a completely different place than you think. The second. Be very, very careful of the family villain you find easy to believe in. I was so willing to believe the worst of Hailey because I had never liked her, and a story that lets us think badly of someone we already disliked is the most comfortable story there is, and comfort is exactly where the truth goes to hide. The person you are most ready to blame is the person you should check on the hardest. I checked on no one. I just kept building for 6 years on a foundation I had never once tested, and the whole thing was a lie, told to me by the one person I would have sworn to you would never lie to me at all. Before you decide who is keeping a door shut, make very sure you know whose hand is on it. I'll see you next time.